Hey guys, hope everyone's doing well. I was thinking about something today. I was having a conversation with someone on X, and it made me really think about a connection that I hadn't really thought through well before. In Numbers, if you remember, the people of Israel, they're getting this manna sent to them from heaven, from God, literally the bread of heaven. In the New Testament, it's called, the food of angels, the bread of angels. He sends down this bread of heaven to them, which comes from heaven and is, if you remember, also a metaphor used to describe Jesus Christ. And that's the connection I started making, which I couldn't believe I hadn't made earlier. He sends this bread of heaven down to them, but they think it's not sufficient. They think they need more. They think they need this meat from him, and they think that what they're sending him isn't meeting their expectations for what they wanted. So they grumble and they complain, and they don't treat with respect what God's giving them, and they think it's insufficient, and they complain against Moses, who Moses is a type of Christ. He's a foreshadowing of Christ. In fact, Christ is described in the Old Testament as a prophet unto Moses, a prophet like Moses. And they grumble and complain against Moses, and they demand bread, and God judges them for rejecting the bread of heaven and for thinking it's insufficient. So he sends down these fiery serpents against them. And fiery serpents, when you think about that, in the ancient world you have Elohim, which is a plural word. It means it's used to describe spirits. And those can be human spirits. For instance, when Saul went to see the witch and raise the body of the prophet Samuel, it describes the spirit that they saw as Elohim. So humans have those spirits, beings of spirit, whether those are divine beings like cherubim, various angels. An angel obviously being a job description, not a type of being, but are described as Elohim. God is also described as Elohim. So it's a spiritual being. These spiritual beings are described as, they are all throughout ancient literature, and in the Bible itself, you have comparisons made between spirit and fire. You also have comparisons, in fact, certain types of heavenly beings are these serpents or dragons. In the ancient world, especially, spiritual beings were often referred to as, or depicted in artwork as, serpents or dragons, winged serpents, usually breathing fire. So having fire-breathing, especially flying serpents, seems to be either a description of spiritual beings or something that is obviously meant to make you think of spiritual beings, come down and attack them. And they ask Moses to intervene. Moses is type of Christ, who's this intercessor for them. Their only way to communicate with the Father is through Moses. And Moses prays to God for their deliverance and for them to be forgiven. And God has Moses create a bronze serpent and hang it on this pole. And he holds it up, and as long as he holds it up, anyone who looks to it for salvation is saved. And all throughout the Bible, pattern is prophecy. All throughout the Bible, you have these little instances, these stories that tell the broader story of salvation, these little precursors or shadows to it. When you think about Jesus coming to earth and offering salvation to the Jewish people, he was their Messiah. He is the bread of heaven that God sent down, and the Jewish people at the time looked at him and thought he wasn't sufficient. It wasn't the food that they wanted to be filled with. They wanted a Messiah who wasn't there to save them from sin. They wanted a Messiah who was going to crush their enemies and defeat Rome, and Jesus was not that. So they grumbled about him. They were arrogant, and they were hostile, and just like they were to Moses. And what did God do? God judged them. They had a spiritual judgment. God partially hardened their hearts. He turned them over to their own sins. And Jesus then offered himself up as salvation to any who wanted it. And he was raised on the cross, just like the serpent on the pole, and anyone who looks to him can be saved, even those who had rejected him. If they look to him, they will be saved. And I just thought that was a perfect little perfect picture in the Old Testament of a prediction of the rejection of Jesus by the Jewish people, and then the salvation of the remnant who looks to him, and eventually the salvation of the entire Israeli people, because when it was all over and done, there was still a nation of Israel, and they were all saved by those fiery serpents. And it's a serpent that's put on the pole. A serpent, the fire-breathing serpent, represents a spiritual being, like God, like Elohim. So the Son of Man, the Son of David, isn't only a man, he is the pre-existent entity, the thing that must be, the thing from which everything came. God is spirit, and so he is symbolized by the image of one of those fire-breathing dragons or serpents. Anyway, that's probably a very obvious connection, probably something most people know, but I thought it was a beautiful little thing, and it had just occurred to me, so thought I'd make a video and talk about it if you hadn't thought about it, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. You guys have a good day.